The funeral wasn't even a month ago when I overheard my son and his wife in my garden. They weren't mourning, they were dividing my inheritance, discussing my health issues, and practically wishing me gone. I just stood there, a coffee tin slipping from my grasp, shattering the silence. They faked concern, but I knew their game. I called a lawyer that very evening. This is my story. Like, share, and let me know where you're listening from. Eleanor, a woman of 66 years, found herself enveloped in a silence that had become her constant companion since the passing of her beloved Arthur. 43 years they had shared, filling their home with laughter, quiet conversations, and the comfortable rhythm of two lives intertwined. Now the sprawling house in the quiet neighborhood echoed with nothing but the ticking of the grandfather clock and the rustle of leaves outside. Each morning she woke to an immense, aching loneliness. Mommy's loneliness, the vast emptiness of her king-size bed a stark reminder of his absence. The world outside continued its frantic pace, but Eleanor felt like a solitary ship, adrift in an ocean of quiet grief. In the initial weeks of her widowhood, her son Julian and his wife Serena had been a frequent presence. Their visits at first were a balm to her wounded spirit. Julian would sit with her, holding her hand, reminiscing about Arthur. Serena would bring casseroles and offer to help with chores. Eleanor, in her raw vulnerability, had mistaken their attention for genuine concern, a comforting anchor in her sea of sorrow. She had welcomed their company, grateful for their presence, attributing their increasing frequency to a loving son looking out for his grieving mother. One crisp autumn afternoon, just as the leaves were turning burnished gold, Eleanor returned home from her routine checkup with Dr. Harding. The doctor had been reassuring, but had reiterated the importance of managing her blood pressure. Clutching her purse, she pushed open the front door, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old books greeting her. As she stepped into the entryway, a murmur of voices drifted from the garden, where the last roses of summer clung defiantly to their stems. It was Julian and Serena. The French doors leading to the patio were ajar, allowing their words to carry clearly on the gentle breeze. Eleanor paused, about to announce her arrival, when a specific phrase caught her ear. "It's easily 2 million, Julian, maybe more." Serena's voice, usually modulated and sweet, was now sharp with an unfamiliar eagerness. Eleanor felt a cold prickle of unease. 2 million? About what? Julian's response, lower but equally audible, confirmed her growing apprehension. "Mom doesn't understand how much we're struggling, Serena. She just doesn't grasp the scale of our debt, the pressure we're under." His tone was tinged with a dismissive quality, as if Eleanor's understanding or feelings were irrelevant. Then came Serena's chilling addition, delivered with a detached practicality that turned Eleanor's blood to ice. "And honestly, Julian, she's too old to change anything now anyway. What's she going to do? Get a new career? Start investing?" There was a brittle laugh, devoid of humor, that echoed the emptiness in Eleanor's chest. A profound dread settled over Eleanor as Julian's next words solidified her worst fears. "The inheritance is basically ours at this point. It's just a matter of time." The casual certainty in his voice, the proprietary claim over something that was still hers, twisted a knife in her heart. But it was what Julian said next that truly shattered her world. And with her blood pressure issues, Dr. Harding's been quite clear. It's not if, but when. We just need to be patient. Eleanor stumbled back a step, leaning against the cool wall of the hallway. Blood pressure issues. Dr. Harding. How could they know? She had shared the details of her health, the specific concerns Dr. Harding had voiced, with no one but Arthur. The realization struck her with the force of a physical blow. They weren't simply discussing her money. They were discussing her life, her impending death, as if it were a scheduled event, an obstacle to their financial gain. They weren't waiting for a gift. They were waiting for her to die. The caring visits, the casseroles, the hand-holding, it was all a macabre performance. Her hands, which moments before had been steady, began to tremble uncontrollably. The ceramic coffee tin she had intended to place on the counter slipped from her grasp. It hit the polished hardwood floor with a sharp, resounding crash, shattering the deceptive silence of the house and the fragile illusion of their love. The noise was like a cannon shot, announcing her presence, breaking the ugly spell. Almost instantly, Julian and Serena appeared at the patio doors, their faces morphing from animated discussion to an expression of practiced concern. Mom, what happened? Are you all right? Julian rushed forward, his eyes scanning the broken pieces of ceramic. Serena hovered behind him, her smile a little too wide, her eyes darting nervously. Oh no, your favorite coffee tin. Are you hurt? And how was your appointment with Dr. Harding? Eleanor looked at their faces, at their perfectly sculpted expressions of worry, their carefully phrased questions. The words "keep up appearances" echoed in her mind, a chilling whisper that stripped away all pretense. The genuine grief she had felt for Arthur was now overshadowed by a burning anger, a cold, fierce resolve. She saw their smiles, their feigned tenderness, not as comfort, but as a mask for their monstrous greed. They were not merely waiting for her inheritance. They were actively anticipating her demise. The understanding settled deep within her, heavy and unyielding. The grief for Arthur had been immense, a suffocating blanket. But this betrayal, this cold-blooded calculation by her own son, ignited a new scorching fire within her. It was a fire that burned away the sorrow and replaced it with an unshakable purpose. Without a word, Eleanor stooped to pick up a large shard of the broken coffee tin, ignoring Julian's outstretched hand. She walked past them, her movements deliberate, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. She went to the antique desk in the study, a place Arthur had loved. From its top drawer, she retrieved his old leather-bound phone book, its pages dog-eared and filled with faded entries. Her finger traced the numbers until she found it. Evelyn Shaw, attorney at law. She picked up the receiver of the landline, her hands no longer trembling, but steady with a newfound strength. The answering machine clicked on. Hello, Evelyn, Eleanor said, her voice clear and firm, a stark contrast to the fragile woman she had been moments before. It's Eleanor Vance. I need to make an appointment as soon as possible. There have been some significant changes. She hung up the phone, a small, resolute smile touching her lips. The silence in the house no longer felt empty. It felt pregnant with possibility, with a future she would now meticulously craft. A fierce, unwavering purpose had ignited within Eleanor, banishing the last vestiges of her grief and setting her on a path she had never imagined. The night stretched before Eleanor, a vast, echoing chasm of darkness. Sleep, once a comforting escape, now felt like an impossible luxury. Julian's words, "She's too old to change anything now anyway," replayed in her mind with relentless cruelty. It wasn't just the blatant greed that stung, it was the casual dismissal of her agency, her very existence, as if her life was merely a financial hurdle to be overcome. She tossed and turned, the soft sheets feeling like a tangled web, each thread a reminder of the trust she had so foolishly placed in her son. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed the hours, each stroke a cold, metallic sound in the oppressive silence. Eleanor lay awake, not grieving Arthur tonight, but consumed by a simmering indignation, a resolve that hardened with every passing moment. Promptly at 9 o'clock the next morning, as if on cue, the phone rang. It was Evelyn Shaw. "Eleanor, I got your message." Evelyn's voice was calm, professional, yet carried a hint of warmth. "You sounded urgent. Is everything all right?" Eleanor explained, her voice steady, that she needed to discuss some significant changes to her will immediately. Evelyn, sensing the gravity, scheduled an appointment for that very afternoon. A sliver of relief, sharp and invigorating, cut through Eleanor's exhaustion. Action. That was what she needed. With the meeting set, Eleanor rose, a renewed sense of purpose guiding her. She went to Arthur's study, a room that still smelled faintly of his pipe tobacco and old leather. There on his large mahogany desk were the binders containing their financial records. She pulled them out one by one. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds. Meticulously, she began to calculate. The house, freed from mortgage years ago, a substantial investment portfolio Arthur had managed, their joint savings. She added the figures with a practiced hand, Arthur having taught her well over the years. The final sum, written on a crisp white notepad, sent a fresh wave of shock through her. 2,150,000, almost precisely $2 million, just as Serena had so excitedly speculated. It wasn't mere speculation, Eleanor realized with a chilling certainty. Julian and Serena hadn't just idly wished for money, they had meticulously calculated her worth. This wasn't a vague hope for an inheritance. It was a detailed financial plan, a cold, hard assessment of what her passing would yield for them. The knowledge settled heavy in her stomach, a bitter taste that lingered. As she put the binders back, she noticed that the bottom drawer of Arthur's desk, where they kept important personal documents like birth certificates and medical records, was slightly ajar. Arthur, ever the fastidious one, would never have left it like that. A cold knot tightened in Eleanor's stomach. She pulled the drawer open fully. The folder labeled medical records was there, but its contents felt thin. Her own neatly organized file, usually bursting with reports from Dr. Harding, was conspicuously absent. It was gone. A frantic pulse beat in her temples. They hadn't just talked about her health, they had accessed information about it. Eleanor grabbed the phone again, her fingers fumbling slightly as she dialed Dr. Harding's office. "This is Eleanor Vance," she announced, her voice tight with a suppressed urgency. "I need to speak with Nurse Brenda, please." Brenda, efficient and kind, came on the line a moment later. After a brief pleasantry, Eleanor got straight to the point. "Brenda, I seem to have misplaced my medical records from my last few visits. Have you by any chance had anyone request them recently?" There was a slight pause on the other end. "Oh yes, Mrs. Vance," Brenda replied, her voice open and unsuspecting. "Your son Julian called last week. He said he needed them for insurance purposes. He was very specific about the dates of your recent checkups and mentioned your blood pressure." The world tilted. "Insurance purposes," Eleanor repeated faintly. It was a lie, a carefully constructed, insidious lie. Julian hadn't just stumbled upon knowledge of her health. He had actively pursued it. He wasn't passively waiting for her decline. He was monitoring it, tracking it, perhaps even anticipating it with a sickening eagerness. The realization hit Eleanor with the force of a tidal wave. Her son was not just greedy, he was a manipulator, a deceiver who saw his own mother as a mere resource to be exploited. Just as the full weight of this betrayal settled upon her, the doorbell chimed. It was her granddaughter, Chloe, Julian's 20-year-old daughter. Chloe stood on the porch, a small potted cyclamen in her hand, its pink blossoms a splash of fragile color against the gray afternoon. "Hi, Grandma," Chloe said, her voice a little subdued. She looked tired, faint shadows beneath her bright eyes, which were usually so full of youthful energy. "I just wanted to bring you something pretty." Eleanor embraced her granddaughter, a genuine warmth spreading through her chest. Chloe was a sweet, gentle soul, still navigating the complexities of young adulthood. "It's lovely, dear," Eleanor said, pulling back slightly. "Come in. Don't stand out there." As they settled in the living room, Chloe placed the plant on the coffee table. "Dad's been asking a lot about my college costs lately," she mused, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. "He's suddenly very interested in the tuition for some of the private universities. I told him the state school is fine, but he keeps pushing." Eleanor's mind whirred. "Oh?" she asked casually, her heart aching for her unwitting granddaughter. "Why the sudden interest in private schools, dear?" Chloe shrugged, a touch of exasperation in her voice. "He said he wants me to have the best and not to worry. He'll have money soon to pay for it. Said it would be a fresh start for all of us." "He'll have money soon." The phrase echoed Julian's earlier, equally chilling declaration. It was all connected. "And dear," Eleanor ventured, her voice carefully neutral, "has your father said anything else to you about anything? Perhaps about my health?" Chloe looked down at her hands, her expression clouding with a flicker of sadness. "Well, he said you might not have much time left, Grandma. He said we should make the most of the time we have." Her voice was barely a whisper. The world went silent around Eleanor. Chloe's words, spoken with innocent sorrow, were the final, irrefutable confirmation. Her own son was poisoning his daughter's mind with lies, preparing her for a future built on her grandmother's anticipated death. He was not just waiting, he was actively preparing everyone around him for it. A steel resolve settled over Eleanor. "Chloe, dear, thank you for the plant. It means a lot." She forced a smile, masking the storm raging within. "Could you do me a favor? I'd like to speak with your father. Could you call him for me and ask him to come over? Say I have something important to discuss." Chloe, sensing nothing amiss, nodded. A few minutes later, Eleanor heard Julian's artificially cheerful voice on the phone as Chloe handed it to her. Mom, everything all right? Chloe said you wanted to talk. The facade was perfect, but Eleanor saw right through it. Yes, Julian, she replied, her voice devoid of emotion. I need you to come over. Now. The doorbell chimed precisely at 7 o'clock that evening. Eleanor, now a woman utterly devoid of sentimental illusion, opened the door to a perfectly composed Julian and Serena. Serena, ever the performer, held an expensive bouquet of lilies and roses, their vibrant colors almost mocking the solemnity of the occasion. Mom, we came as soon as we could, Julian exclaimed, stepping inside. He enveloped Eleanor in a hug that felt more like an appraisal than an embrace. His eyes, usually quick to feign warmth, now seemed to dissect her, searching for signs of weakness. You look wonderful, Mom, he said, pulling back slightly, a touch of surprise in his voice. The new medication Dr. Harding prescribed must be working very well indeed. He was testing the waters, Eleanor realized, trying to reconcile the image before him with the medical records he had illicitly obtained. Eleanor smiled, a sweet, guileless expression that belied the storm brewing beneath. Yes, Julian, it is, she replied, her voice calm and steady. Dr. Harding is very pleased with my progress. In fact, he expects I'll live many more years, with proper management, of course. She watched him closely, a silent observer in her own drama. A fleeting look, a shadow of disappointment or perhaps even frustration, flickered across Julian's face. It was gone almost instantly, replaced by a forced cheerfulness. Serena, too, seemed to falter for a split second, her bright smile becoming unnaturally rigid. That's fantastic news, Eleanor, she echoed, her tone just a beat too enthusiastic. The words hung in the air, hollow and insincere. They settled in the living room, a space still imbued with Arthur's quiet presence. While Julian launched into a carefully curated monologue about his demanding work and Chloe's upcoming academic challenges, Eleanor observed them. Their eyes, she noticed, lingered a little too long on certain items. Serena's gaze drifted from Arthur's impressive collection of antique watches displayed in a glass case to the ornate carvings of the Victorian sofa they were perched on, a piece Arthur had meticulously restored. Julian's attention seemed to snag on the painting above the fireplace, a valuable landscape Arthur had inherited from his own father. They weren't seeing beloved family heirlooms, they were cataloging assets, mentally assigning value, envisioning their own hands on these treasures. During a brief lull in Julian's one-sided conversation, Eleanor decided to drop her own carefully placed bombshell. You know, she began, her voice thoughtful, all this talk about the future with Chloe's education and everything has really made me think. She paused, letting her words hang in the air, creating a deliberate anticipation. I've been thinking about the future too, and I've realized it's high time I updated my will. Julian's posture shifted immediately. He leaned forward, his casual facade dropping, his attention sharpened, almost predatory. That's smart thinking, Mom, he said, his voice a fraction too eager. Very smart. Have you given any thought to updating your will? You know, things change, situations evolve. He practically vibrated with barely concealed excitement, already seeing the inheritance being formally transferred to him. Eleanor met his gaze calmly. Indeed, Julian, and I have. In fact, I have an appointment with lawyers tomorrow morning to review everything. She savored the small, almost imperceptible flinch in his eyes. Serena, ever the pragmatist, quickly interjected, her smile a practiced performance of helpfulness. Oh, Eleanor, that's wonderful. If you need any help understanding the legal language, you know how complicated these things can be. Julian could certainly come with you. He's so good with all that paperwork, understands the nuances of legal documents. The offer was less about help and more about control, about ensuring they'd had a seat at the table, a hand in the drafting process. Eleanor turned to Serena, her smile sweet, almost saccharine. That's incredibly thoughtful of you, Serena, she replied, her voice soft but firm. But I think I can manage just fine on my own. After all, she paused, her gaze flicking to Julian, I'm not too old to understand my own financial affairs, am I? Julian's face, which had been alight with hopeful anticipation, turned a shade paler. The color drained from his cheeks as the full weight of her words landed. He recognized them. They were his own, thrown back at him with an elegant, almost brutal precision. The casual dismissal of her, the statement that had haunted her sleepless night, was now a weapon, wielded with grace. A flicker of something akin to fear, or perhaps just cold realization, crossed his eyes. He stammered, "Of course not, Mom. You're perfectly capable." The artificial cheer had evaporated, replaced by a thinly veiled discomfort. The rest of the visit passed in a strained quiet. Julian and Serena were less talkative, their previous eagerness replaced by a subdued wariness. Eleanor, however, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. She had cast her line, and they had bitten, revealing their true intentions in their insidious manipulations. After they finally made their excuses and left, the silence in the house returned, but it was a different kind of silence now. It wasn't the silence of grief or loneliness, but the quiet hum of a mind at work. Eleanor walked over to Arthur's favorite armchair, the one by the fireplace. She settled into its familiar comfort, no longer a grieving widow adrift, but a woman with a purpose as sharp and unyielding as steel. She looked around the room at the objects her son and his wife had coveted. They might have seen a path to easy wealth, but Eleanor saw something else entirely. She saw the foundations of a new battle, a challenge she was now fully prepared to meet. Julian might have thought his mother was old and easily dismissed, but he was about to discover the strength of a woman scorned, a woman who had found a new reason to live. He would soon learn that Eleanor Vance was far from finished. The plush silence of Evelyn Shaw's office felt a world away from the emotional turmoil Eleanor had experienced. Sunlight streamed through the large window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, but Eleanor's focus was unwavering. She sat across from Evelyn, whose calm, intelligent gaze met hers. "Evelyn," Eleanor began, her voice steady and clear, "I need to make significant changes to my will. I want to disinherit Julian completely." Evelyn, a seasoned lawyer, didn't flinch. She simply nodded, her expression neutral. "That is certainly your prerogative, Eleanor. However, it is a very significant decision, and one that can have profound emotional and legal repercussions. Have you considered perhaps reducing his inheritance, rather than eliminating it entirely? Sometimes a smaller but still meaningful sum can soften the blow and avoid potential challenges." Eleanor met Evelyn's eyes, her resolve hardened by sleepless nights and bitter revelations. "I'm absolutely certain, Evelyn," she stated, her voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "I want to remove Julian from my will entirely. As for Serena, she was never in it." She paused, then added, "But I do have another request. I want to leave my estate to someone who truly deserves it, someone whose inheritance would not only benefit them, but would also, quite frankly, devastate Julian and Serena. I want them to feel the sting of what they have lost, not just financially, but emotionally." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "That's a very specific objective, Eleanor. Do you have anyone in mind?" Eleanor shook her head. "Not yet, but I need some time to consider. I'll let you know." Evelyn agreed, her professionalism unwavering, and they scheduled a follow-up. Leaving the lawyer's office, Eleanor felt a strange mix of exhilaration and unease. The path ahead was clear, but the beneficiary remained a blank space. She drove aimlessly through the city streets, her mind sifting through distant relatives, old friends, and various charities. Nothing felt right. Nothing resonated with the deep, righteous indignation that fueled her. Then, at a busy intersection, she saw him, a man perhaps in his late 40s, with a kind, open face and a shock of sandy brown hair. He was crossing the street, heading towards a large hospital building. What struck Eleanor most was his resemblance to Serena. It wasn't overt, but the shape of his eyes, the line of his jaw, held an undeniable familial similarity. An impulsive thought, born of pure instinct, seized Eleanor. She followed him. She parked her car a block away and walked to Mercy General Hospital, watching him disappear through the main entrance. Inside, she approached the information desk, her heart pounding a little with the thrill of the chase. "Excuse me," Eleanor said to the volunteer, a cheerful woman with silver hair. "I'm looking for a gentleman I just saw come in. He has sandy brown hair, looks to be about 45, 48. The volunteer smiled. "Oh, you must mean David Miller. He's one of our best cardiac nurses. He just started his shift." David Miller. Eleanor committed the name to memory. David Miller, she repeated as if to herself. I wonder, does he have any family in the area? The volunteer, ever helpful, consulted her computer. Let's see, David Miller. Yes, it shows he has a sister, a Serena Miller, but, the volunteer lowered her voice slightly, it says they're not close. Very different people, I gather. A spark ignited in Eleanor's mind. Serena Miller. Could it be? The resemblance, the shared surname, the estranged relationship. It was too much of a coincidence. Eleanor thanked the volunteer and left, a new target for her investigation firmly in place. That evening, armed with David's name and the knowledge of his relationship with Serena, Eleanor made a calculated move. She called Martha, Serena's mother, under the guise of inquiring about family connections and genealogy, a hobby she vaguely implied she was pursuing. After a polite exchange, Eleanor steered the conversation. You know, Martha, Eleanor said casually, I was at Mercy General Hospital today, and I ran into someone who looked remarkably like Serena, a David Miller, a cardiac nurse there. Any relation? A noticeable pause stretched across the phone line. Martha's usual cheerful demeanor seemed to dim. David, she finally said, her voice softer, tinged with a hint of melancholy. Yes, David is Serena's half-brother, my son from my first marriage. The not close comment from the hospital volunteer now made perfect sense. Eleanor feigned surprise. Oh, really? I had no idea Serena had a brother. I don't think she's ever mentioned him. No, I suppose she wouldn't, Martha sighed. They've never gotten along, truth be told. David is, well, he's too principled for Serena's liking. Always has been. Eleanor, sensing an opening, gently prodded, What do you mean too principled? Martha, perhaps relieved to finally unburden herself, began to recount a tale that chilled Eleanor to the bone, yet simultaneously ignited a triumphant spark of recognition. It goes back years to when my mother, grandmother Elena, was getting on in age. She wasn't senile, mind you, but she was easily influenced, especially by Serena. Serena started borrowing money, then getting her to sign things, maxing out her credit cards with promises to pay her back when she inherited. David found out, and he was furious. He confronted Serena, told her it was elder abuse. He even got a lawyer to help protect grandmother Elena's assets. Eleanor listened, a grim smile forming on her lips. And what happened then? Serena, she turned on David, accused him of trying to manipulate grandmother Elena for his own gain, of being greedy. She painted him as the villain to anyone who would listen, including Julian, after they met. She completely cut him off, wouldn't let him visit grandmother Elena unless she was there. It was awful, but David, he still tried to help. He paid for grandmother Elena's medications out of his own pocket when Serena had maxed out all her cards and left her with nothing. So David protected her, Eleanor mused, her voice carefully neutral. He did, Martha confirmed, a note of pride entering her voice despite the sadness. But when grandmother Elena passed, Serena inherited $80,000. David got nothing, not a single cent. The pieces clicked into place with satisfying precision. David Miller, Serena's ostracized, principled half-brother, a man who had stood up against greed only to be vilified and disinherited himself. The irony was exquisite. Julian and Serena, so keen to disinherit Eleanor, would now be disinherited in favor of the very man Serena had once branded a villain for doing the right thing. It was poetic justice. But Eleanor knew she couldn't rely solely on Martha's account. She needed to confirm David's character for herself. She would need to meet him, to assess the man behind the story. Ready for the next chapter of this unfolding drama? Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single twist in Eleanor's incredible journey. With Martha's revelations still echoing in her mind, Eleanor knew the next step was critical. She had to meet David Miller herself. She needed to look him in the eye to gauge his character and to verify the details that could solidify her decision. The next morning, Eleanor called Mercy General Hospital, requesting to speak with David Miller. She explained that she was a friend of Martha's and wished to discuss a family matter, suggesting a brief coffee meeting after his shift. The receptionist, after a moment's hesitation, relayed the message, and David, perhaps out of a sense of familial obligation or simple curiosity, agreed to meet. For their arranged meeting, Eleanor, ever thorough, did her own research. A quick search online confirmed David Miller's nursing credentials, a clean license, no disciplinary actions, and several glowing commendations for his compassionate patient care from both colleagues and former patients. The reports painted a picture of a dedicated, ethical professional, reinforcing Martha's claims about his principled nature. At the small, bustling coffee shop near the hospital, Eleanor arrived early, securing a quiet corner table. David walked in promptly at 5 o'clock, still in his scrubs, a faint scent of antiseptic clinging to him. He was just as Eleanor remembered, a kind, unassuming face, his sandy hair a little disheveled from his shift, but his eyes held a warmth that was instantly disarming. He seemed a little nervous, perhaps wondering what this meeting with a stranger, a friend of his mother's, was truly about. "Mrs. Vance?" he asked, extending a hand, his grip firm and honest. Eleanor took his hand, a sense of rightness settling over her. "David," she replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "Please, call me Eleanor." She gestured to the chair opposite her. "Thank you for meeting me. I must confess I wasn't entirely truthful on the phone." She took a deep breath, steeling herself for his reaction. "I didn't just want to discuss a family matter. I know Serena. She's my daughter-in-law." David's open expression immediately became guarded. The warmth in his eyes receded, replaced by a wary caution. He sat back in his chair, his arms crossing defensively over his chest. "Your daughter-in-law?" he repeated slowly, a frown creasing his brow. "And what does this have to do with my grandmother, Lillian?" His voice was calm, but the underlying tension was palpable. Eleanor met his gaze directly. "It has everything to do with her, David. I've recently learned about Serena's past actions, particularly concerning your grandmother. And to be frank, I'm concerned that the same patterns might be repeating themselves." She watched him closely, noting the subtle tightening around his mouth, the almost imperceptible clench of his jaw. Before Eleanor could elaborate, David leaned forward, his professional demeanor returning, but now infused with a genuine, unselfish concern. "Are you in some kind of trouble, Eleanor?" he asked, his voice soft but urgent. Is she doing something to you? Are you being exploited?" His immediate reaction was not to defend himself or his sister, but to assess Eleanor's welfare. It was the confirmation Eleanor needed, the proof of his character. Eleanor shook her head, a wave of relief washing over her. "Not yet, David, but I'm taking precautions. I need you to tell me everything. The full situation with grandmother Elena, in your own words." David hesitated for a moment, as if weighing the trust she was placing in him. Then he began to speak, his voice low and measured, recounting a story of calculated deceit and heartbreaking manipulation. "Grandmother Elena was always a little forgetful, especially in her later years," he explained, his gaze distant, lost in memory. "Serena, my half-sister, started helping her with her finances. But it wasn't help. It was exploitation. She gained access to grandmother Elena's bank accounts, her credit cards. She convinced grandmother Elena that she was protecting her money, handling things so she wouldn't have to worry." He paused, a flicker of pain in his eyes. But grandmother Elena wasn't living comfortably. She was living on crackers and soup, while Serena was using her credit cards for lavish shopping sprees, making payments on her new car, even taking cash withdrawals. David's voice tightened with a quiet rage. "I confronted Serena, of course. I told her it was wrong, unethical, illegal, but she's incredibly manipulative. She turned grandmother Elena against me, twisting my concern into accusations of me being greedy, of trying to steal from her. She convinced the rest of the family that I was the problem, the one trying to cause trouble. I tried to get help," David continued, his voice heavy with the weight of past injustice. "I reported it to Adult Protective Services. They investigated, but Serena is so good at playing the victim. She presented a convincing narrative, painting me as the angry, jealous brother, without definitive proof that grandmother Elena was being held against her will or was completely incapacitated. Their hands were tied. Serena kept control and grandmother Elena kept believing her." He looked directly at Eleanor then, his gaze earnest and unwavering. "Eleanor, I need you to understand something. Serena is incredibly skilled at manipulation. and she specifically targets elderly people who might be vulnerable. She appears charming, helpful, but it's all a facade. She sees them not as people, but as opportunities. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed his hand, a profound sense of certainty washing over her. His story, his unwavering sense of justice, his immediate concern for her welfare, it all confirmed Martha's account and every instinct she had. David Miller was not only worthy, he was the perfect, ironic choice. He represented everything Serena abhorred: integrity, honesty, and a refusal to compromise on principle. She left the coffee shop that day with a lightness in her step she hadn't felt since Arthur's passing. The blank space in her will was now filled, not just with a name, but with a purpose. David Miller would be her beneficiary. And in doing so, Eleanor would not only rectify an old injustice, but would deliver a blow to Julian and Serena that went far beyond mere financial loss. It would be a blow to their carefully constructed narrative of entitlement, a testament to the power of true character over calculated greed. The very next morning, a sense of profound clarity guiding her, Eleanor called attorney Evelyn Shaw. "Evelyn," she announced, her voice resonating with conviction, "I have my beneficiary. His name is David Miller, and I want him to be my sole beneficiary." A beat of silence stretched on the line. "Eleanor?" Evelyn's voice was measured, careful. "Are you absolutely certain? This is an unusual decision, particularly given that David is not directly related to you by blood, and you only recently met him. Are you perhaps acting out of anger towards Julian?" "No, Evelyn," Eleanor replied, her tone unwavering. "This isn't anger. This is calculated justice." She then recounted in succinct and precise detail the story of David Miller, his principled stand against Serena's exploitation of her own grandmother, and the subsequent unjust disinheritance. She also laid bare Julian and Serena's recent machinations, the overheard conversation, the missing medical records, Chloe's innocent revelations. "They are not just waiting for me to die, Evelyn," Eleanor concluded, her voice devoid of emotion. "They are actively monitoring my health and manipulating others with the expectation of my death. David, on the other hand, embodies the integrity they so utterly lack." Evelyn listened patiently, her initial caution giving way to a professional respect for Eleanor's clear-headed resolve. "I understand, Eleanor. Given the circumstances, and to make this will as unassailable as possible, I strongly advise including a detailed letter of intent or explanation within the will itself. It will outline your reasons for disinheriting Julian and for choosing David Miller as your beneficiary. This will make it much harder for Julian to contest the will on grounds of undue influence or diminished capacity." Eleanor nodded, a grim satisfaction spreading through her. "Excellent, Evelyn. I want this will to be not just a legal document, but a message, a clear, undeniable message." For the next 2 hours, they meticulously crafted the document, each clause and phrase imbued with Eleanor's renewed purpose. The will was a testament to her intent, a narrative of betrayal, and an affirmation of integrity. As they finalized the draft, Eleanor had one more request. "I want to ensure that Julian does not discover these changes until after my death, Evelyn. I want him to continue operating under the false assumption that his inheritance is secured." Evelyn considered this. "We can certainly file the will under seal, which will prevent it from becoming public until probate. However," she added, her expression serious, "given what you've told me about Julian's actions and his knowledge of your health, it's highly probable he will attempt to have you declared mentally incompetent once the will is revealed. It's a common tactic in these situations, especially when a child is disinherited." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She had anticipated this. "Then we need to preempt it, Evelyn, immediately. I want irrefutable documentation of my mental competency now, before any of this comes to light." Evelyn nodded, impressed by Eleanor's foresight. "A wise move. I can arrange for a comprehensive psychological evaluation with an independent specialist. Dr. Emily Roberts is excellent. She handles these kinds of assessments frequently." 3 days later, Eleanor found herself in the quiet, reassuring office of Dr. Emily Roberts, a woman whose gentle demeanor belied her sharp, analytical mind. Eleanor underwent a battery of tests, cognitive assessments, memory recall exercises, and a thorough psychiatric interview. She answered every question with precision, recounted events with vivid detail, and engaged in conversation with the intellectual vigor that had always defined her. At the end of the session, Dr. Roberts smiled warmly. Eleanor, I can confirm without a shadow of a doubt that your cognitive function is excellent. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning skills are robust, and there is absolutely no indication of any diminished capacity. You are fully capable of making sound, complex decisions regarding your personal and financial affairs. She assured Eleanor that a detailed report, unequivocally documenting her mental competency, would be prepared and sent directly to Evelyn Shaw. Returning to Evelyn's office, Eleanor felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The will, the letter of intent, and now Dr. Roberts's comprehensive report all formed an impregnable fortress around her final wishes. She signed the final document as with a flourish, her hands steady, a triumphant smile touching her lips. The immense satisfaction that washed over her was more potent than any monetary gain. Now, Eleanor, Evelyn cautioned, her voice bringing her back to the present, it is absolutely crucial that you act normally around Julian and Serena. Do not give them any reason to suspect your intentions or your recent actions. The more secure they feel in their false assumptions, the greater the impact will be when the truth is revealed. Eleanor absorbed the advice, nodding. She was a woman playing a long game, and discretion was her most powerful tool. That very evening, as if on cue, Julian called. His voice was bright, almost effusive. Mom, Serena and I were just wondering if you'd like to join us for dinner tomorrow night. My treat. And he added, his voice dropping slightly, laced with an artificial casualness. How did your meeting with the lawyers go? Everything in order with the will? He couldn't help himself. The lure of the inheritance was too strong. Eleanor allowed a soft chuckle to escape her lips. Dinner sounds lovely, dear. And yes, she replied, her gaze settling on a framed photograph of Arthur. Everything is exactly the way it should be. She paused, letting the double meaning hang in the air, a secret truth hidden in plain sight. A genuine smile, one Julian could never decipher, spread across her face. The game was on. For the dinner Julian had so eagerly arranged, Eleanor chose her attire with a quiet deliberateness. She selected a sapphire blue silk dress, one Arthur had always complimented, saying it brought out the color of her eyes. It was elegant, understated, and perfectly suited to the woman she was becoming. Poised, formidable, and utterly unyielding. She felt a subtle strength radiating from within, a quiet power that had been dormant for too long. At the restaurant, a notoriously expensive establishment in the city's upscale district, Julian and Serena were a picture of exaggerated attentiveness. They lavished her with compliments, Julian pulling out her chair with a flourish, Serena admiring her dress with practiced sincerity. They insisted on ordering the finest wine and the most exquisite dishes, a performative generosity that Eleanor recognized instantly as an investment in their future spoils. The conversation, though seemingly light and cheerful, was laced with an undercurrent of insidious probing. They spoke of Arthur, of memories, but their questions invariably circled back to Eleanor's well-being, specifically searching for any hint of frailty or decline. Serena, leaning forward with a show of genuine concern, asked, How are you sleeping lately, Mom? Grief can be so disruptive, can it? I know after my grandmother passed, I barely slept for weeks. Eleanor met her gaze, a serene smile playing on her lips. I'm sleeping wonderfully, thank you, Serena, she replied, her voice calm and clear. In fact, I feel more energetic than I have in months. I suppose the quiet of the house allows for a deeper rest. A flicker of disappointment, fleeting but unmistakable, crossed both Julian's and Serena's faces. They quickly masked it, but Eleanor had seen it. Julian, sensing the conversation wasn't yielding the desired results, shifted tactics. Well, that's good, Mom. But at your age, it's important to take things easy. No unnecessary stress or big decisions. Just relax and let us take care of things. The underlying message was clear. Stay passive, stay out of the way, don't interfere with their plans. Eleanor merely chuckled softly. That's precisely why I made sure to handle all my important business quickly and efficiently, Julian. You know how I like to be organized. Everything is settled exactly as it should be, leaving me free to simply enjoy life. She watched them, enjoying the faint tightening of their smiles, the brief, frustrated glance Julian shot at Serena. They were trying to interpret her words, to find a hidden meaning that confirmed their expectations. Serena, ever the opportunist, seized on Eleanor's words, her expression becoming one of profound satisfaction. "Oh, that's such a thoughtful sentiment, Mom. It's so important for family to look out for each other, isn't it? To make sure everything is taken care of." She thought she had won, that Eleanor was confirming her inheritance. The irony was almost too sweet for Eleanor to bear. The following week confirmed Eleanor's suspicions about their constant monitoring. Julian's calls became almost daily, filled with seemingly innocuous questions about her day, her health, her mood. Serena initiated impromptu visits, often bringing a small gift, a box of chocolates, a new paperback. Always lingering, always observing. Eleanor, however, maintained her serene facade, radiating an air of contentment and robust health that slowly but surely chipped away at their expectations. During one of Serena's visits, Eleanor retreated to the kitchen to make tea, leaving Serena alone in the living room. When she returned, she caught Serena subtly putting her phone away. A moment later, Eleanor noticed something else. The delicate porcelain figurine Arthur had gifted her for their anniversary had been moved slightly, angled differently. It was then Eleanor understood. Serena wasn't just observing, she was photographing. She was creating a meticulous inventory of her expected inheritance, cataloging the treasures she believed would soon be hers. The audacity, the sheer entitlement, left Eleanor cold but even more resolute. That evening, after Julian and Serena had finally departed, Eleanor picked up the phone and dialed David Miller. "David," she began after a brief greeting, "I have a hypothetical question for you. If, purely hypothetically, you were to come into a significant amount of money, an inheritance perhaps, what would you do with it?" There was a thoughtful pause on the other end. "Hypothetically?" David chuckled softly. "Well, Eleanor, honestly, I'd first make sure my own modest needs were met, perhaps pay off my mortgage. But beyond that, I've always dreamed of doing more for the elderly patients I see. So many struggle, not just with health, but with practical things. Rent, nutritious food, rides to appointments. I'd love to establish a nonprofit, a small foundation to help bridge those gaps, to give them dignity and security in their later years." His voice was earnest, filled with a genuine passion. Eleanor's heart swelled. He was truly remarkable. "David," she said, her voice dropping, filled with a newfound trust, "this isn't hypothetical. I need to tell you everything." She then laid bare the entire story. Julian and Serena's calculated betrayal, her own decision to disinherit them, and her unwavering choice to make him, David Miller, her sole beneficiary. Silence greeted her revelation. Then David's voice, filled with shock and disbelief, broke through. "Eleanor, no, I can't. That's your son's inheritance. I couldn't possibly accept something like that. It's too much." He was genuinely overwhelmed, his innate sense of ethics kicking in. "David," Eleanor insisted, her voice firm but gentle, "Julian has chosen his path. He and Serena have made it abundantly clear what kind of people they are. They are not family to me, not in any meaningful sense. You, David, with your integrity and your compassionate heart, you are more family to me than my own blood relatives have proven to be. You stood up for your grandmother, for what was right, and you were unjustly punished for it. This is not charity, it is a rectification. It is my final wish, and I am sound of mind, as my lawyer and doctor will attest." There was another long pause as David processed her words. Finally a sigh, then a hesitant acceptance. "Eleanor," he said, his voice still laced with disbelief, I don't know what to say. I'm honored, but—" "Just promise me one thing, David," Eleanor interrupted gently. "Promise me you will keep this secret. You must not tell a soul, especially not Julian or Serena. Let them continue in their ignorance. It is vital to my plan." "I promise, Eleanor," David said, his voice now resolute. "I will keep your secret, and thank you, truly." Eleanor hung up the phone, a profound sense of peace settling over her. The final piece was in place. David was worthy, and he was sworn to secrecy. The waiting game was truly on. For the next 3 months, Eleanor engaged in a carefully choreographed dance with Julian and Serena. It was a performance, intricate and deliberate, designed to reinforce the narrative they desperately wanted to believe. During their increasingly frequent visits, Eleanor would occasionally feign a moment of confusion, mixing up dates or slightly muddling a detail about her medication. "Was that yesterday, dear, or the day before?" she might ask Julian, her brow furrowed in a convincing display of mild forgetfulness. "I do get my days mixed up sometimes, especially with all these pills." Julian and Serena, predictably, seized upon these manufactured lapses with thinly veiled eagerness. "Oh, Mom, maybe you need a pill organizer," Serena suggested brightly, her eyes practically sparkling with anticipation. "I can get you one with all the days of the week. That way, we can keep track together." Eleanor knew their true intention, not to help, but to document, to gather evidence of her supposed declining competency. Despite her regular checkups with Dr. Harding consistently showing excellent physical health and cognitive function, Eleanor would occasionally share crafted concerns with Julian and Serena. "Dr. Harding says my blood pressure is perfectly stable," she'd say, "but sometimes I worry my memory isn't quite what it used to be. Little things, you know." Serena's eyes would light up with a chilling intensity, her voice becoming overly solicitous. "Oh, Mom, we must ensure early intervention. Perhaps a neurologist?" "We're here to help you, darling." Their concern was a grotesque charade, a performance of care masking a ravenous greed. While performing this delicate deception, Eleanor was also meticulously making her own preparations. She updated her list of important contacts, ensuring all necessary individuals, including David, had current information. She began writing heartfelt letters to a few trusted friends and Arthur's distant cousins, explaining her rationale and her final wishes, instructing them to open the letters only after her passing. She arranged for a discreet appraisal of her house, a final confirmation of its value, and spent hours organizing all her financial and personal documents, leaving no room for ambiguity or dispute. Throughout this period, she met David Miller monthly, usually for coffee at the same quiet cafe. Each meeting deepened her admiration for his genuine character. He never spoke of the inheritance, always focusing on his work, his patience, and his burgeoning dreams for an elder care nonprofit. He shared his frustrations with the systemic issues in healthcare and his quiet triumphs in making a difference in individual lives. Eleanor saw in him a reflection of the integrity she cherished, and a profound sense of purpose grew stronger with each conversation. As the autumn leaves began to fall, a surprising invitation arrived. Julian called, inviting Eleanor to Thanksgiving dinner at their house. It was the first holiday invitation in 3 years. Eleanor accepted, a quiet smile playing on her lips. She knew exactly what this meant. They were tightening their grip, bringing her closer into their fold, ensuring they had full oversight as they waited. On Thanksgiving Day, Eleanor arrived at Julian and Serena's meticulously decorated home. The scent of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air. As she stepped into the living room, her gaze fell upon the mantelpiece. There, among framed photos of Julian, Serena, and Chloe, were 2 photographs of her and Arthur. One was a candid shot from their last anniversary, the other a more formal portrait. Julian had taken them himself subtly during earlier visits, without her permission. They were not displayed out of affection, Eleanor realized with a fresh pang of disgust, but as proof of her presence in their lives, a visual claim to their future inheritance. During dinner, after the initial pleasantries and a performative toast to family, Julian launched into another carefully orchestrated suggestion. "You know, Mom," he began, his voice laced with concern, "Serena and I have been talking. This big house of yours, it's a lot to manage, isn't it? All those stairs, the upkeep. We really think you should consider moving into a senior living community, something with services where you're looked after. We've even been researching some excellent places." His underlying agenda was clear. Get her out of the house, sell it, and convert that asset into cash. Chloe, Julian's 20-year-old daughter, who had been quietly picking at her plate, looked up, her brow furrowed. "But Dad," she interjected, her voice innocent, "Grandma loves her house. Why would she need to move? She's perfectly independent." Julian shot her a sharp look, but Eleanor merely smiled inwardly. Chloe, in her genuine concern, was an unwitting foil to her father's machinations. As the evening wound down and Eleanor prepared to leave, Julian pulled her aside, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Mom," he began, his hand resting on her arm, a gesture she now found repulsive. "About the will. To avoid any messy probate complications, it might be wise to transfer your assets to me now. Just to simplify things. It's what most people do, for peace of mind." It was his final brazen attempt to seize control before it was too late. Eleanor met his gaze, her eyes clear and unwavering. Her smile was firm. "Julian, thank you for your concern, but my lawyer, Evelyn Shaw, has assured me that my estate planning is exactly where it needs to be. There will be no complications." The finality in her voice left no room for argument. Julian's face, usually so composed, betrayed a flicker of frustration, a moment of unmasked greed. The very next morning, Eleanor called Evelyn Shaw. "Evelyn," she said, her voice firm, "I have one more request for my will. I want to add a recorded message. I want to speak my truth, clearly and unequivocally, so there is no doubt about my intentions." Evelyn, accustomed to Eleanor's foresight, quickly arranged the recording session. Eleanor sat in the quiet studio, a microphone before her, and began to speak. Her voice, calm and resolute, filled the space. She explained her decision to disinherit Julian, quoting his own words about her being too old to change anything, detailing his and Serena's manipulative actions, the stolen medical records, the inventory of her home. Then, with warmth and conviction, she spoke of David Miller, his integrity, his compassion, and his selfless dream. It was a powerful message, a final, unassailable declaration of her will, intended to echo far beyond her lifetime. Eleanor lived for 2 more years, a period during which Julian and Serena's monitoring escalated into a relentless, almost frantic vigilance. Their visits became more frequent, their calls more insistent. They even went so far as to hire a home assistant, a kind but eagle-eyed woman named Mrs. Davies, ostensibly to help Eleanor with chores, but truly to serve as their informant. Eleanor, however, remained stubbornly healthy, her mind sharp, her spirit unbroken. She continued her subtle performance, occasionally feigning a momentary lapse, but never enough to give them concrete proof of incompetence. She thrived on their frustration, each passing day of her robust health a silent victory. In her final months, Eleanor developed pneumonia. It was a severe bout, and this time her body, weary from years and the silent battle she'd been fighting, began to wane. Julian and Serena were suddenly constant fixtures at her hospital bedside. Julian, with a practiced sigh, would whisper hopes of her recovery, his eyes, however, betraying a false, barely contained anticipation. Serena, ever practical, used a moment of Eleanor's weakness to extract the spare house keys, murmuring about getting the house ready for when you come home. As Eleanor watched them slip the keys into their pockets, she could almost see them envisioning their future possessions, mentally redecorating her living room. Through it all, her granddaughter, Chloe, remained a consistent source of genuine comfort. Chloe visited daily, holding Eleanor's hand, reading to her, her innocent love a balm to Eleanor's soul. In a private moment, just between them, Eleanor had secretly arranged for a substantial trust fund for Chloe's education, an investment in a future free from her parents' greed. One quiet Tuesday morning in March, Eleanor passed peacefully in her sleep. Her long game was over, her final, unassailable move complete. At the funeral, Julian, ever the performer, delivered a eulogy that painted himself as the devoted, loving son, recounting carefully selected anecdotes that twisted their relationship into a saccharine narrative of familial bliss. Serena stood beside him, a picture of somber elegance, accepting condolences with a solemn nod. The air was thick with their barely concealed anticipation. The very next day, attorney Evelyn Shaw convened the will reading. Julian, Serena, and Chloe were all present, seated around Evelyn's polished conference table. Julian and Serena exuded a quiet confidence, their hands almost touching, radiating a silent, shared excitement. They had already celebrated prematurely, envisioning their $2 million inheritance, their freedom from debt, their new life in Eleanor's large, quiet house. Evelyn, her expression neutral, cleared her throat. "Before we begin," she announced, "there will be one additional guest joining us." The door opened, and in walked David Miller. Julian looked utterly confused, his brow furrowed, while a look of pure, unadulterated shock contorted Serena's face. David, looking uncomfortable but resolute, nodded politely to the room and took a seat. Evelyn began. She first announced a small yet significant trust fund. To Emma, Eleanor's beloved granddaughter, Evelyn read, a trust fund of $50,000 is established for her continued education. Chloe's eyes widened in surprise and gratitude. Then came the moment Julian and Serena had been waiting for, the revelation of the bulk of the estate. Evelyn's voice resonated through the silent room. The entirety of Eleanor Vance's estate, totaling $2,150,000, along with all her real property and personal belongings, is bequeathed in full to Mr. David Miller. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sharp intake of Julian's breath. His jaw dropped, his face draining of all color. He looked utterly stunned, as if the words Evelyn had spoken were in an alien language. Serena, however, let out a piercing scream of pure, unadulterated rage. No, that's impossible. That's illegal. He manipulated her. He must have. Evelyn, unperturbed, simply continued. Before her passing, Mrs. Vance recorded a message to be played at this reading. She pressed a button on a small recorder. Eleanor's voice, clear and firm, filled the room. Julian, Serena, her voice began, you thought I was old, that I couldn't change anything. You watched me, spied on me, stole my medical records. You waited for me to die, and you did so with a chilling greed. Eleanor's voice went on, detailing their machinations, Julian's precise words about her being too old to change anything now anyway, Serena's inventory of her home, their anticipation of her demise. Then a shift in tone. David Miller, on the other hand, a man of integrity and compassion, tried to protect his own grandmother from similar exploitation by Serena. He suffered for it. He is a man who truly embodies what it means to care for others. And so it is to David Miller that I entrust my legacy, to carry forward the values that you, Julian and Serena, so utterly abandoned. Serena was on her feet, screaming accusations at David. He preyed on her. He manipulated an old woman. Evelyn, calm and authoritative, held up a hand. I anticipated such accusations, Serena. Therefore, I also have a report from Dr. Emily Roberts, a highly respected, independent psychologist who conducted a comprehensive evaluation of Eleanor Vance's mental competency. It unequivocally states that Eleanor was of sound mind, fully capable of making her own decisions, and completely aware of her actions at every stage of her estate planning. She then presented the physical report, its binding a stark refutation of Serena's claims. Chloe, Julian's daughter, watched in horrified silence as the full extent of her parents' greed and deception was laid bare. Her eyes, filled with disgust and a profound disappointment, turned to Julian. Dad, she whispered, her voice trembling. How could you? How could you do this to Grandma? She then turned to Evelyn. I don't want the trust fund. Give it to David. With that, Chloe, a young woman utterly repulsed by her father's avarice, stood up and walked out of the room, leaving her parents to face the wreckage of their ambition. Julian and Serena's attempt to contest the will was a futile exercise. Eleanor's thorough planning, including the letter of intent, the recorded message, and Dr. Roberts' competency report, proved an impenetrable defense. The courts upheld the will without hesitation. They were forced to vacate Eleanor's house, stripped of the inheritance they had so callously coveted. Within 6 months, Julian's marriage crumbled under the weight of their shattered dreams and mutual recriminations. Serena, always pragmatic, divorced him, seeking to salvage what she could from her own ruined aspirations. Chloe, inspired by David's integrity and Eleanor's ultimate act of justice, changed her major to social work. Upon graduation, she joined David's burgeoning organization as a volunteer coordinator, expressing her heartfelt gratitude to him for honoring Eleanor's memory. David, true to his word, sold Eleanor's house and used the entire estate to establish the Dignity Project, a nonprofit dedicated to providing practical assistance and support to vulnerable elderly individuals, just as he had always dreamed. He also founded the Eleanor Crawford Fund within the project, specifically aimed at educating the public and preventing financial abuse of the elderly. Eleanor's legacy, a profound message about integrity, justice, and the true meaning of family, now lived on, ensuring that no other vulnerable person would suffer the fate of grandmother Elena. The immediate aftermath of the will reading sent ripples through the lives of everyone involved, a profound testament to Eleanor's carefully orchestrated final act. For Julian and Serena, the shock quickly congealed into a bitter, gnawing resentment, a toxic stew of anger and disbelief. Their attempts to contest the will, as Evelyn Shaw had predicted, were futile. The ironclad documentation, Eleanor's poignant recorded message, and Dr. Emily Roberts' unequivocal report on her mental competency left no legal avenue open. The justice system, once a potential tool for their greed, now stood as an impassive guardian of Eleanor's truth. For David Miller, the inheritance was a seismic shift. The initial shock had given way to a profound sense of responsibility and gratitude. Eleanor's house, the very symbol of Julian and Serena's avarice, was swiftly sold. The substantial funds, now free from the taint of selfish ambition, were entirely dedicated to his lifelong dream. The Dignity Project was launched with a fervor that matched its founder's integrity. David, still working part-time as a cardiac nurse, poured his boundless energy into building the nonprofit from the ground up. He established a network of volunteers, secured partnerships with local community centers, and began reaching out to elderly individuals struggling with practical needs that often went unnoticed by official services. The project quickly gained momentum, its initial focus on providing essentials like grocery deliveries, transportation to medical appointments, and assistance with household repairs. David ensured that every interaction was imbued with respect and empathy, treating each recipient with the dignity Eleanor had so deeply valued. The funds allowed for immediate, tangible impact, helping hundreds of seniors maintain their independence and quality of life. Eleanor's legacy was not just financial, it was a living, breathing testament to compassionate action. Chloe, Julian, and Serena's daughter, found her own path irrevocably altered. The raw disgust she felt at the will reading was a watershed moment, stripping away any lingering illusions about her parents. She honored her grandmother's sharing, not by accepting Eleanor's thoughtful trust fund, which, upon her instruction, was indeed redirected to the Dignity Project, but by changing her university major to social work. The experience had ignited a fierce passion within her to advocate for the vulnerable, to ensure that no other elderly person suffered the quiet exploitation her great-grandmother, Elena, had endured, or the insidious manipulations her own grandmother, Eleanor, had faced. After completing her degree with honors, Chloe sought out David. She joined the Dignity Project as its volunteer coordinator, her youthful energy and sharp mind proving invaluable. She worked tirelessly, organizing outreach programs, recruiting new volunteers, and forging deeper connections within the community. Chloe and David formed an unspoken bond, united by their shared admiration for Eleanor and their commitment to her vision. Their relationship, free from the complexities of blood, blossomed into a true familial connection, a testament to Eleanor's belief that family was defined by character, not just by lineage. Chloe often found herself reflecting on the profound irony. Her grandmother's death had severed her from her biological parents, but had connected her to a man who became a truer family and to a purpose that gave her life meaning. Julian and Serena's lives, once poised for a comfortable future built on inherited wealth, descended into a spiraling mire of debt and recrimination. The loss of Eleanor's house, the anticipated $2 million, fractured their marriage beyond repair. Serena, cold and calculating, divorced Julian within 6 months, blaming him for their downfall, for not having secured the inheritance earlier. She quickly moved on, her charm now a desperate tool in her continued pursuit of superficial affluence, though never again reaching the heights she had once envisioned. Julian, stripped of his perceived inheritance, his wife, and the respect of his daughter, became a shell of his former self. His professional life suffered under the weight of his personal failures and chronic indebtedness. He lost his job, unable to maintain the facade of success without the promise of Eleanor's money to prop him up. He often retreated into bitter self-pity, blaming everyone but himself for his circumstances, a stark contrast to the diligent, principled David, whose life Eleanor's bequest had transformed. He was left with nothing but the echoes of his own greed, haunted by Eleanor's recorded words. Beyond the immediate ripple effect, the Dignity Project flourished, becoming a beacon of hope for the elderly in the community. David, recognizing the enduring power of Eleanor's personal story, established the Eleanor Crawford Fund within the larger project. This specific fund is dedicated to raising awareness about elder financial abuse, offering legal aid resources, and developing educational programs for families and caregivers. Eleanor's name, once associated with a quiet, dignified life, now became synonymous with protection, vigilance, and justice for the vulnerable. The story of Eleanor Vance, of her quiet strength and her unwavering resolve in the face of betrayal, became an inspiring legend whispered through the halls of the Dignity Project. It was a story of a woman who, when faced with the deepest form of familial treachery, chose not bitter revenge, but profound, calculated justice. She had not only punished greed, but had also championed integrity, ensuring that her legacy was one of purpose and compassion, echoing far beyond her lifetime, forever changing lives for the better. The impact of Eleanor's will reverberated not just through the lives of Julian, Serena, David, and Chloe, but also subtly yet profoundly through the wider community. The story, initially a quiet scandal within legal and social circles, slowly began to surface, a cautionary tale whispered and then openly discussed. Evelyn Shaw, Eleanor's attorney, while bound by client confidentiality, often found herself referencing the thoroughness of certain estate plans in seminars she conducted for other legal professionals, implicitly highlighting the importance of clear intent and comprehensive documentation, particularly in cases involving potential elder exploitation. Dr. Emily Roberts, too, integrated the case into her lectures on cognitive assessment, using it as an example of an individual maintaining full capacity despite external pressures and insidious attempts to undermine it. The media, always keen for a compelling human interest story, eventually picked up snippets of the tale, albeit without revealing specific names or figures. Articles appeared in local newspapers and online forums discussing the increasing prevalence of elder financial abuse and the proactive measures individuals could take to protect their assets and wishes. These stories, inspired by Eleanor's resilience, underscored the importance of strong wills, independent legal counsel, and psychological evaluations to counter malicious claims. Eleanor, in her quiet defiance, had unknowingly become a symbol, an advocate for countless others. The Dignity Project, fueled by Eleanor's substantial endowment and David's unwavering dedication, quickly outgrew its initial grassroots phase. The influx of funds allowed them to hire more staff, secure a larger office space, and expand their services far beyond the initial scope. What began as a small initiative to assist local seniors became a regional force for good. They established mobile clinics to reach homebound individuals, set up a comprehensive legal aid clinic specifically focused on elder protection, and even started a mentorship program where younger volunteers were paired with seniors, fostering intergenerational connections and combating the isolation many elderly people faced. Chloe, now a rising star within the organization, channeled her pain and anger into a relentless drive for change. She spearheaded several community outreach programs, working directly with families to educate them on the signs of elder abuse and the resources available to prevent it. Her personal connection to the story, though never explicitly stated, gave her an authentic empathy that resonated deeply with the individuals and families she served. She found a healing solace in her work, transforming her grandmother's tragic experience into a catalyst for widespread positive impact. The void left by her parents' betrayal was gradually filled by a sense of purpose and a true, meaningful connection to David and the shared mission. Julian, meanwhile, sank further into obscurity. His attempts to rebuild his life were hampered by his tarnished reputation and the sheer weight of his financial failures. He became estranged from most of his former friends, unable to maintain the facade of success and prosperity without Eleanor's expected inheritance. He rarely saw Chloe, their relationship irreparably fractured by his greed. He lived in a small, rented apartment, a stark contrast to the grand house he had once believed would be his. The once charming, ambitious man was replaced by a bitter, defeated figure, forever haunted by the $2 million he had so narrowly lost. He was a living testament to the destructive power of unchecked avarice. Serena, true to her opportunistic nature, quickly recalibrated her life. While she never achieved the extravagant lifestyle she craved, she managed to maintain a comfortable existence through a series of strategic relationships and calculated charm. The episode with Eleanor had been a blow, but it also served as a harsh lesson. Next time, she would be even more subtle, even more manipulative. Her superficiality remained her defining trait, a woman forever chasing the fleeting glimmer of material wealth, unburdened by conscience or genuine affection. The Eleanor Crawford Fund, a specific arm of the Dignity Project, became a powerful advocate for policy change. David, with his growing network and Chloe's passionate advocacy, began lobbying local and state legislators for stronger protections against elder financial abuse. They worked to close loopholes, increase penalties for offenders, and establish clearer reporting mechanisms. Eleanor's quiet strength had, in essence, transformed into a powerful collective voice for the vulnerable, ensuring that her stand against betrayal would echo in legal reforms and protective measures for generations to come. The story of Eleanor Vance became a quiet legend, not only in her former community, but also among the elderly population she now posthumously served. It was a tale of resilience, of a mind sharp and unyielding that turned betrayal into triumph. Her legacy was not defined by the wealth she accumulated, but by the wisdom and integrity with which she chose to wield it. She had proven that true inheritance was not merely a transfer of assets, but a transmission of values, a powerful reminder that justice, even if delayed, ultimately prevails, and that genuine compassion outweighs all the gold in the world. Her final act was not one of revenge, but of a profound and enduring love for what was right. Years passed, and the echoes of Eleanor's story matured into a legacy. The old house, once a silent witness to greed, stood transformed. After its sale, the property was purchased by a young family, breathing new life into its venerable walls, unaware of the drama that had unfolded within. The neighborhood, too, slowly forgot the scandal, but the spirit of Eleanor's action lived on in the tangible good it created. The Dignity Project, under David Miller's visionary leadership and Chloe's passionate operational guidance, became a model for eldercare nonprofits nationwide. What began as a local initiative expanded its reach, attracting grants from larger foundations and drawing the attention of national media outlets. David, often interviewed, spoke with an understated humility about the organization's mission, always crediting the profound generosity of an anonymous benefactor. Though in private, he would often smile and say, "Eleanor would have loved this." The anonymous benefactor was a subtle nod to Eleanor's desire for privacy in her cunning plan. But to David and Chloe, it was her indelible mark. Chloe, having fully embraced her calling, excelled as a social worker and later as a director within the Dignity Project. Her empathetic approach, combined with her firsthand understanding of familial betrayal, made her an invaluable resource for families struggling with similar issues. She often shared stories, carefully anonymized, of the manipulative tactics she had observed, providing practical advice and emotional support. Her relationship with David evolved into a deep, familial bond, far stronger and more authentic than any she had ever shared with her biological parents. They were partners in purpose, their shared mission a comforting anchor in a world that had once seemed so broken. Julian's decline continued, a slow, painful descent into irrelevance. He lost contact with most of his extended family, who, having learned the truth of his actions through hushed conversations and the inevitable spread of gossip, quietly distanced themselves. He became increasingly isolated, a lonely figure struggling with small, unfulfilling jobs, his once charming facade now cracked and peeling. He often thought of the house, of the $2 million, of the life he had been so certain was his, and a bitter envy gnawed at him. He never saw Chloe, the chasm between them too wide, too deep, to ever bridge. His dreams had become ashes, scattered by the very greed he had so eagerly embraced. Serena, despite her initial bounce back, found herself perpetually running in place. Her divorce from Julian had granted her a clean slate, but her fundamental nature remained unchanged. She pursued relationships with a transactional mindset, seeking partners who could offer security and status. While she avoided outright financial destitution, she never achieved the extravagant lifestyle she had once envisioned, nor the deep, genuine connections she unwittingly sacrificed for material gain. She was forever trapped in a cycle of desire and fleeting satisfaction. A woman always looking for the next opportunity, never truly content. The Eleanor Crawford Fund, within the Dignity Project, gained national recognition. Its advocacy led to significant legislative changes, strengthening elder protection laws in several states. Training programs developed by the fund became mandatory for elder care providers and financial advisors, equipping them with the tools to identify and prevent exploitation. Eleanor's final recorded message became a powerful educational tool played, with consent and appropriate disclaimers, in workshops and seminars, a chilling testament to the cunning of financial abuse and the necessity of vigilance. Her voice, once a private whisper of truth, now spoke to thousands, urging them to protect their loved ones and their legacies. The concept of calculated justice became a quiet mantra within the organization. It wasn't about revenge, David often explained, but about ensuring that those who act with integrity are rewarded, and those who seek to exploit are held accountable. It was about empowering individuals to reclaim their agency, even in their most vulnerable moments, and to shape their legacies according to their true values. On a personal level, David and Chloe often shared quiet moments, reminiscing about Eleanor. They would talk about her wit, her quiet strength, and her unwavering resolve. Chloe found comfort in knowing that her grandmother's last years, though marked by betrayal, were ultimately defined by purpose and a profound act of love. David, in turn, learned much from Chloe about forgiveness and the complex nature of family. Together, they honored Eleanor not with grand monuments, but with tangible acts of kindness, building a community of care that reflected the best of human nature. The silence that had once haunted Eleanor's home after Arthur's passing was now filled with the hum of activity at the Dignity Project. The laughter of volunteers and the grateful voices of the elderly served. It was a silence transformed, brimming with the vibrant life of Eleanor's enduring legacy. She had found a way to speak beyond the grave, not with bitterness, but with a clarity and power that reshaped destinies and redefined the very meaning of family. The passage of time did little to diminish the profound impact of Eleanor's story, instead allowing its lessons to ripen and deepen. The narrative, once a raw wound of betrayal and a shining example of justice, now served as a foundational myth for the Dignity Project, a constant reminder of why their work was so critical. David and Chloe, working in tandem, often found themselves sharing aspects of Eleanor's tale, carefully omitting identifiable details, to illustrate the various facets of elder abuse, from the subtle manipulation to the outright financial exploitation. They held an annual Eleanor Crawford Memorial Lecture as part of the Dignity Project's outreach, inviting prominent speakers in elder law, social work, and psychology. These lectures became well-attended events, attracting not only professionals, but also concerned family members and seniors seeking knowledge and protection. Each year, the lecture would subtly weave in themes from Eleanor's journey: resilience in the face of adversity, the power of proactive planning, and the enduring value of integrity. The core message was always one of empowerment and vigilance, echoing Eleanor's quiet strength. Chloe, with her inherent compassion and keen understanding of the emotional complexities involved, became particularly adept at counseling families. She often drew upon her own difficult experiences, sharing generalized insights about the seductive nature of greed and how it could corrode familial bonds. Her authenticity resonated deeply, building trust with those who felt isolated and ashamed. Many times she observed the subtle signs in other families that mirrored her own parents' behavior, allowing her to intervene early and guide others towards proactive measures, saving countless potential victims from similar fates. She became a silent warrior, fighting the very demons that had afflicted her own family. David, grounded and methodical, focused on the systemic changes. He collaborated with tech companies to develop secure digital platforms for managing finances for seniors, offering transparent access to trusted family members while incorporating robust safeguards against unauthorized transactions. He championed the establishment of independent ombudsman offices specifically for elder care, ensuring that there was a neutral third party available to investigate complaints and protect the rights of seniors. His vision was broad, his approach comprehensive, and his dedication unwavering. He was Eleanor's legacy personified, translating her quiet wisdom into a tangible, widespread force for good. Julian and Serena, meanwhile, remained adrift in the currents of their own making. Julian's life was a testament to the hollowness of material ambition devoid of moral grounding. He bounced between low-paying jobs, perpetually shadowed by his past failures. His bitterness hardened over the years, transforming him into a man incapable of joy or genuine connection. He occasionally saw his estranged sister, but their conversations were brief, devoid of warmth, merely a perfunctory nod to a shared yet deeply divided past. The 2 million remained his personal hell, a phantom fortune that forever taunted him, a constant reminder of his fatal miscalculation. He never acknowledged Eleanor's recorded messages' truth, choosing instead to believe a delusional narrative of his mother being manipulated, a coping mechanism that only further isolated him. Serena's path diverged slightly. She learned from her mistakes, not in a moral sense, but in a strategic one. She became more cautious, more subtle in her manipulations, never again risking such a public and definitive defeat. She settled into a life of comfortable, if unremarkable, anonymity, her charm now a more refined, less overtly predatory tool. She cultivated a small circle of acquaintances who valued superficiality over substance, and while she never attained the grand wealth she coveted, she maintained an image of understated elegance. She was the ghost of her former self, a testament to the fact that some characters, once forged in greed, can never truly be reformed. The Eleanor Crawford Fund grew to include educational scholarships for aspiring social workers and nurses, particularly those interested in gerontology and elder advocacy. Chloe often mentored these scholarship recipients, sharing her insights and encouraging their passion. In this way, Eleanor's influence extended even further into the future, shaping the next generation of caregivers and advocates. The ripples of her calculated justice became waves, gently but firmly reshaping the landscape of elder care and protection. The house, Eleanor's original home, now filled with the laughter of children and the aroma of home-cooked meals, stood as a silent counterpoint to the dynamic change her legacy had wrought. It was a private sphere, oblivious to the public good it had indirectly funded. But for David and Chloe, it remained a sacred place, a starting point of a journey that had profoundly impacted their lives and the lives of countless others. Eleanor, in her wisdom, had not simply disinherited a greedy son, she had ignited a movement, a perpetual flame of advocacy and compassion that burned brighter with each passing year. Her voice from beyond the grave continued to speak volumes, a timeless narrative of integrity's ultimate triumph over avarice. As the years turned into a decade, the initial shockwaves of Eleanor's will settled into a profound, lasting impact, demonstrating that true legacies are built not just on wealth, but on the principles that guide its distribution. The Dignity Project, now a nationally recognized entity, was celebrating its 10th anniversary, a vibrant testament to Eleanor's foresight and David's unwavering dedication. What began as a local effort had grown into a sophisticated network, influencing policy at state and federal levels, setting new benchmarks for elder care advocacy and protection. David Miller, no longer just a cardiac nurse, had become a respected leader in the nonprofit sector. His quiet, humble demeanor belied a formidable strategic mind, capable of navigating complex bureaucratic landscapes and inspiring broad-based support. He often spoke at conferences, his story of accidental inheritance turned into passionate purpose, resonating deeply with audiences. He maintained his core values, ensuring that the Dignity Project never lost sight of the individual, vulnerable seniors it served. He still visited some of his former patients, a reminder of the personal connections that had ignited his mission. Chloe, now a seasoned professional, was the executive director of the Dignity Project. She had blossomed into a confident, articulate leader. Her empathetic approach honed by years of direct service and her deeply personal understanding of family dynamics. She often recounted the story of her grandmother Eleanor, without divulging specifics, as a powerful allegory for the insidious nature of elder abuse and the importance of self-advocacy. Her ability to connect with donors, policymakers, and most importantly, the seniors they served, was unparalleled. She embodied the bridge between the personal betrayal that had sparked the project and its universal mission. The Eleanor Crawford Fund had provided scholarships to dozens of students, many of whom now worked in elder care, some even joining the Dignity Project. These young professionals carried Eleanor's spirit forward, a new generation committed to integrity and compassion. The fund also expanded its reach, launching national campaigns to raise awareness about digital scams targeting the elderly, evolving its strategies to meet the ever-changing landscape of exploitation. Eleanor's initial act of self-preservation had truly blossomed into a comprehensive, enduring shield for thousands. Julian and Serena remained stark reminders of the cost of their choices. Julian had completely faded from public life, his name now associated only with rumors of past scandal and present hardship. He lived a meager existence, bitterness his only constant companion. He occasionally saw his estranged sister, but their relationship remained transactional, a hollow echo of a family that had imploded. He had lost not just an inheritance, but his family, his dignity, and any semblance of a meaningful life. The phantom millions continued to haunt him, a personal purgatory of what-ifs and self-recrimination. Serena, despite her efforts to rebuild, was never able to recapture the social standing she craved. The shadow of the inheritance dispute, though not widely publicized with names, subtly impacted her reputation. She found it harder to charm her way into advantageous situations, as a certain guardedness often met her calculated overtures. She lived a comfortable but ultimately unfulfilled life, perpetually seeking external validation and material possessions to fill an inner void that no amount of wealth could truly satisfy. She was the architect of her own gilded cage, forever chasing an elusive happiness. The lessons of Eleanor's story extended beyond the beneficiaries and the antagonists. It became a quiet inspiration for countless individuals who heard variations of the tale. People began to think differently about their own estate planning, about their relationships with aging parents, and about the insidious ways greed could manifest within families. The story served as a powerful reminder that wealth, when wielded with purpose and integrity, could transcend mere monetary value, becoming a force for profound social good. Eleanor's ghost, if one could call it that, was not one of lingering sorrow or revenge, but of quiet triumph and enduring wisdom. Her voice, preserved in Evelyn Shaw's archives and conceptually in the work of the Dignity Project, continued to resonate. It was a voice that spoke not of an ending, but of a beginning. The beginning of a movement, a legacy far greater than any single individual or any sum of money. She had transformed a personal betrayal into a universal lesson, forever etched into the fabric of elder care advocacy, ensuring that her final act was not merely a will, but a testament to the unwavering power of principled living. The legacy of Eleanor Vance continued to unfold, not as a static historical event, but as a dynamic, living force for change. The Dignity Project, now well into its second decade, became synonymous with innovation in elder care. Under Chloe's leadership, it launched a groundbreaking program leveraging virtual reality to combat loneliness in isolated seniors, allowing them to experience virtual tours of famous landmarks, attend digital concerts, and even visit family members living far away, all from the comfort of their homes. This initiative, funded in part by the sustained growth of the Eleanor Crawford Fund, earned national accolades and attracted new waves of philanthropic support. David Miller, while still deeply involved as a board member and strategic advisor, had begun to transition some of his day-to-day responsibilities to Chloe and her capable team. He often took on more ambassadorial roles, traveling across the country to speak about the importance of ethical estate planning and the dangers of elder exploitation. His message, always delivered with earnest conviction, carried the weight of personal experience and the undeniable success of the Dignity Project. He remained the quiet, principled man Eleanor had recognized, but now he was also a powerful, respected voice in the national dialogue surrounding aging. Chloe, having fully come into her own as a leader, never forgot the profound personal lessons of her past. She often conducted workshops specifically for adult children, guiding them through the complexities of caring for aging parents, emphasizing open communication and warning against the pitfalls of financial temptation. She found a quiet satisfaction in these sessions, knowing that she was actively preventing the very heartaches that had scarred her own family. Her relationship with David was now akin to that of a father and daughter, a bond forged in shared purpose and mutual respect, a true testament to the idea that chosen family can often be stronger than blood. Julian's existence continued its bleak trajectory, He moved from one transient living situation to another, his life a stark contrast to the comfortable affluence he had once envisioned. The bitterness had calcified into a deep-seated resentment that defined his every interaction. He often found himself alone, consumed by the what-ifs and the gnawing regret of opportunities lost. The memory of Eleanor's recorded voice, though he tried to suppress it, would sometimes surface in his quieter moments, a chilling reminder of his mother's final, devastating judgment. He was living proof that unchecked greed ultimately devours the greedy themselves, leaving behind an empty husk. Serena, ever the survivor, managed to maintain a superficial sheen of respectability, but the grand ambitions of her youth had long since faded. She never truly achieved financial independence, perpetually relying on others for security, her charm having lost its sharpest edge. She remained estranged from David, and their paths never crossed. She represented a different kind of failure, one not of utter destitution, but of a life devoid of deep meaning or lasting connection, forever chasing a reflection in a mirror. The wider cultural impact of Eleanor's story continued to grow. Case studies inspired by her detailed planning became standard curriculum in law schools and social work programs, teaching future professionals about the critical importance of anticipating and mitigating familial disputes in estate planning. The media, both traditional and new, revisited the themes regularly, often featuring success stories from the Dignity Project and spotlighting individuals who had taken proactive steps to protect their legacies. Eleanor's individual act of defiance had transformed into a powerful, collective wisdom, shaping public discourse and empowering individuals across the nation. Beyond the structured programs and policy changes, the underlying philosophy of calculated justice permeated communities in more subtle ways. Neighbors became more vigilant for signs of elder exploitation. Families engaged in more open and honest conversations about inheritance and care for aging parents. There was a quiet but palpable shift, a greater awareness of the ethical responsibilities that accompany familial ties and financial stewardship. Eleanor's presence, though unseen, remained a guiding star. Her photographs, cherished by David and Chloe, hung discreetly in the Dignity Project's main office, a constant reminder of the woman who had dared to rewrite her own narrative. Her home, a physical space now filled with different lives, was but a memory. Yet her true home had become the thousands of lives touched by her benevolence, the communities strengthened by her foresight, and the ethical standards she had so bravely championed. She had turned an act of personal betrayal into an enduring testament to the power of principles, ensuring that her voice, full of wisdom and unwavering resolve, would continue to resonate through the generations, a quiet but mighty force for good. 2 decades after Eleanor Vance's passing, her impact continued to ripple, demonstrating how a singular act of courage could set in motion a cascade of profound and lasting change. The Dignity Project, now an institution of national renown, celebrated its 20th anniversary, a testament to the enduring power of its founding principles. Its headquarters, a modern, purpose-built facility, housed a bustling team of social workers, legal advocates, and technology specialists, all working tirelessly to uplift and protect the elderly. The Eleanor Crawford Fund, having grown exponentially, now supported dozens of initiatives, from cutting-edge research into age-related cognitive decline to nationwide campaigns promoting intergenerational solidarity. David Miller, now a respected elder statesman of the nonprofit world, had gracefully transitioned to a more advisory role. His hair was grayer, but his eyes still held the same earnest warmth that Eleanor had first recognized. He often shared the genesis story of the Dignity Project, always emphasizing Eleanor's meticulous planning and unwavering integrity. He rarely spoke of the personal betrayal, focusing instead on the transformative power of her ultimate choice. David had found a fulfillment far beyond anything he could have imagined as a cardiac nurse, becoming a true architect of social good, his life a living testament to Eleanor's vision. Chloe, as the long-standing executive director, was the driving force behind the organization's continued innovation. Her leadership was characterized by a blend of deep empathy and strategic acumen, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible in elder care. She had forged powerful alliances with policymakers, tech innovators, and other nonprofits, creating a comprehensive ecosystem of support for seniors. The pain of her past, once a burden, had transmuted into a profound strength, fueling her dedication and giving her a unique perspective that resonated with everyone she encountered. She had built a family within the Dignity Project, a community bound by purpose and a shared commitment to Eleanor's ideals. Julian's story by this point was a quiet tragedy, almost entirely forgotten by the world that had once seemed to promise him so much. He lived in near anonymity, his life a testament to the corrosive power of greed and regret. He never remarried, his personal connections having long since withered. He occasionally saw news reports about the Dignity Project, catching glimpses of Chloe, a successful, respected woman, and a pang of something akin to regret, perhaps even a flicker of pride, would sometimes pierce his hardened heart. But these moments were fleeting, quickly subsumed by the familiar bitterness. He was a cautionary tale, a ghost of the ambitious man who had once believed his mother's death would be his salvation. Serena's path continued its self-serving trajectory. She lived a comfortable, if somewhat unremarkable life, her initial fire for grand luxury having mellowed into a more subdued pursuit of material comfort. She had learned to navigate the world with a more discreet brand of manipulation, avoiding the dramatic failures of her past. She never connected with David, nor did she ever fully acknowledge her role in Eleanor's decision. She remained a woman defined by her superficiality, forever chasing the next fleeting satisfaction, her life an empty vessel devoid of the deeper connections that truly enrich human experience. The Eleanor Crawford Fund, at its 20th year mark, had become a cornerstone of national elder advocacy. It had successfully pushed for federal legislation requiring stricter financial oversight for guardians of the elderly and implemented nationwide educational campaigns on recognizing and reporting elder abuse. Its impact was quantifiable: a significant reduction in reported cases of financial exploitation in areas where its programs were active, and a measurable increase in the financial literacy of seniors. Eleanor's final recorded message, transcribed and translated into multiple languages, continued to serve as a powerful teaching tool, a voice from the past guiding the future. The story of Eleanor Vance had moved beyond being a simple tale of inheritance. It was now a part of the cultural fabric of elder care, a narrative of empowerment that resonated with individuals facing similar challenges. It had inspired countless seniors to take control of their estate planning, to seek independent counsel, and to document their wishes with clarity and foresight. It had also served as a stark warning to those who might consider exploiting the vulnerable, reminding them that justice, though sometimes slow, could be meticulously and devastatingly delivered. The old house, Eleanor's home, now had generations of memories woven into its fabric by its new occupants. It was a place of warmth and laughter, a testament to life continuing, thriving. But in the wider world, Eleanor's true home had become the vibrant, ever-expanding network of compassion and protection that bore her spirit. She had transformed her personal tragedy into a universal triumph, ensuring that her quiet courage, her unwavering principles, and her fierce love for justice would continue to shape lives for decades, perhaps centuries to come. Her will was not just a legal document, it was a blueprint for a better, more ethical society, a testament to the enduring power of a single, resolute woman. As the years stretched toward the quarter-century mark since Eleanor Vance's poignant departure, her influence, rather than fading, seemed to deepen and expand, like ripples from a stone cast into a vast, calm lake. The Dignity Project, now a venerable institution, stood as a towering monument to her foresight and resilience. It had evolved into a multifaceted organization, addressing not just financial exploitation, but also social isolation, health disparities, and digital literacy among seniors, truly embodying a holistic approach to elder well-being. David Miller, now a venerable figure himself, had retired from his direct involvement with the Dignity Project, though he remained its spiritual guide and a revered board member. His days were spent in quiet contemplation, occasionally consulting on new initiatives, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. He carried Eleanor's trust with profound humility and gratitude, often reflecting on how a chance encounter and a woman's unwavering resolve had reshaped his entire destiny. He was a living testament to the serendipitous nature of genuine connection and the enduring power of ethical choice. Chloe, by this time, was a national figure in elder advocacy, her name synonymous with compassionate leadership and impactful change. She had successfully steered the Dignity Project through various challenges, securing unprecedented funding and establishing satellite offices across the country. Her personal story, still largely private but implicitly understood by those close to her, fueled her unyielding commitment. She had found not just a career but a purpose, and in doing so had healed the deep wounds inflicted by her birth family. Her bond with David remained exceptionally strong, a cherished, chosen family that had grown richer with shared experiences and unwavering mutual support. Julian's existence was by now a faint, almost forgotten whisper in the annals of family history. He had faded into obscurity, his life defined by a quiet, unremarked passage through time. He lived a solitary life, his once charming persona long eroded by bitterness and self-pity. The weight of his past actions, and the ghost of the $2 million he never received, had permanently warped his perspective. He was a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that true wealth lies not in accumulation but in character, and that some losses are far more profound than financial ones. Serena's trajectory mirrored Julian's in its ultimate lack of profound fulfillment, though her external circumstances were slightly more comfortable. She maintained a veneer of respectability, adept at navigating social circles where appearances mattered more than authenticity. Yet her life lacked depth and genuine connection. She remained a person perpetually on the periphery, never truly anchoring herself to anything substantial, forever a seeker of external validation. Her initial brazen greed had evolved into a more subtle, yet equally empty, form of self-interest, confirming Eleanor's unspoken assessment of her character. The Eleanor Crawford Fund, now a massive endowment, had evolved to become a leading grantor in the field of gerontology and social justice. It funded innovative research into healthy aging, supported pilot programs for intergenerational housing, and continued its relentless advocacy for stronger protective laws for seniors. Eleanor's recorded message, once a private declaration, had been archived as a historical document, a powerful artifact in the fight against elder abuse. Its message, transcribed and translated, resonated globally, inspiring similar initiatives in other countries. Eleanor's voice, a testament to her strength, echoed across continents. The wider societal impact of Eleanor's story and the Dignity Project was immeasurable. There was a demonstrable shift in public perception towards aging, moving away from a narrative of decline towards one of vibrant, active seniorhood. Communities became more inclusive, designing spaces and programs that celebrated the wisdom and contributions of their elder citizens. The legal framework surrounding elder protection was significantly strengthened, making it far more difficult for opportunistic individuals to exploit vulnerable seniors. Eleanor Vance, the quiet woman who had overheard a callous conversation in her garden, had transformed from an individual facing personal betrayal into an enduring symbol of justice, integrity, and proactive empowerment. Her ultimate act was not about revenge, but about setting things right, about ensuring that compassion and ethical conduct prevailed over avarice. Her legacy was not confined to a will or a nonprofit. It was woven into the fabric of a more humane and just society, a testament to the profound and lasting difference one principled individual could make. Her spirit lived on, a guiding light for future generations, forever reminding them that true power lies in character and in the courage to uphold what is right, even in the face of the deepest betrayal. A full 30 years had passed since Eleanor Vance, a woman who had once navigated the quiet sorrow of widowhood, orchestrated her final brilliant act of calculated justice. Her name, once whispered in the context of a family scandal, had now ascended to legendary status within the circles of elder care and philanthropy. The Dignity Project, the direct embodiment of her vision, stood as a beacon of innovation and compassion, a multi-generational organization that continued to break new ground in supporting and protecting the elderly. David Miller, now a nonagenarian, lived a life rich with purpose and peace. He was revered as the project's founder, his soft-spoken wisdom a cherished resource. He often reflected on Eleanor, a woman he had only known for a short time, yet whose trust had fundamentally reshaped his entire existence. He understood that Eleanor's gift was not just financial, but a profound affirmation of his character, a powerful belief in the good he could bring to the world. He lived out his days surrounded by respect and love, a true patriarch to a family he had chosen and who had chosen him. Chloe Dier, now in her 50s, was at the height of her powers as a leader, recognized internationally for her pioneering work. As the CEO of the Dignity Project, she had overseen its expansion into global initiatives, partnering with organizations in other countries to adapt Eleanor's model of elder protection. Her journey from a confused, heartbroken granddaughter to a visionary leader was a testament to the transformative power of purpose. She had found a profound healing in her work, transforming the pain of her past into an unwavering commitment to a more just and compassionate future. Her chosen family, built on shared values and mutual respect with David and the project's dedicated team, was the richest inheritance she could have ever received. Julian's existence was by now a distant, almost spectral memory. He had long since succumbed to the ravages of a life lived without meaning, his bitterness having consumed him from within. He died alone, his last thoughts likely haunted by the phantom $2 million that had been both his obsession and his undoing. His story became a footnote, a stark, cautionary tale, whispered only among those few who remembered the initial scandal, a grim testament to the destructive power of avarice. He was a man who had lost everything by trying to gain it dishonestly, leaving behind no legacy but the emptiness of his own choices. Serena, ever the survivor, had carved out a comfortable but ultimately sterile existence. Her charm had become a polished, brittle shell, incapable of fostering genuine connection. She lived a life of quiet desperation, forever chasing a fleeting external validation that could never fill the void within. She had outlived Julian, but found no solace in his demise, for her own life remained a monument to superficiality. She never acknowledged Eleanor's impact, nor did she ever truly reckon with her own role in the family's unraveling. Her life, though outwardly stable, was an echo of a promise unfulfilled, a legacy unbuilt. The Eleanor Crawford Fund had grown exponentially, its reach extending far beyond initial expectations. It had not only funded groundbreaking research and legislative advocacy, but had also inspired a cultural shift in how societies viewed and treated their elders. The very concept of calculated justice had entered the lexicon of ethical philanthropy, encouraging benefactors to consider not just who should receive wealth, but why, and what impact that distribution would have on broader societal values. Eleanor's final recorded message, once a private declaration, was now studied in ethics courses, its powerful words a timeless reminder of the human cost of greed and the profound impact of principled action. The physical house, Eleanor's beloved home, had passed through several families by now. It stood as a charming, unremarkable dwelling, its past secrets absorbed into its very foundations. No one who lived there now knew of the drama that had unfolded within its walls, the conversation that had sparked a revolution in elder care. Yet, the spirit of Eleanor Vance permeated the air, not in the form of a haunting, but as an invisible, benevolent force that continued to shape thousands of lives. Eleanor's legacy was not about revenge. It was about the profound affirmation of moral courage. She had not only protected her own dignity, but had also provided a template for others to do the same. Her life, initially defined by love and then by betrayal, had ultimately transcended both, blossoming into an enduring testament to the power of one individual to change the world. She had proven that true inheritance is not measured in dollars, but in the enduring impact of one's values, leaving behind a world undeniably better than she had found it. Her quiet strength had become an unbreakable shield, her voice an eternal beacon, her memory a timeless source of inspiration.